how do we actually build law? I'm not just talking about writing it down, but constructing it from the ground up. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the invisible architecture that holds our legal systems together. We're talking about conceptual legal constructions, and this entire explainer is based on the fascinating work of Professor Vihar Kiskinov. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll tackle the big puzzle that makes law so unique. Then, we'll get into the main event, the architect's special tool. After that, we'll look at some historical blueprints, clarify the difference between big concepts and everyday rules, and wrap up with why all of this is so critical for the laws we're building right now. All right, Section 1, Law's Ideal Puzzle. You see, studying law is fundamentally different from studying nature. And to really get what we're talking about today, we have to start with this core problem. See, what lawyers and legal scholars study, it's just not the same kind of thing a biologist or a physicist studies. So what's the difference? Well, look at this. In the natural sciences, you have a real physical thing. Let's say an apple. You can hold it, you can bite it, and from that real object, you create an idea or a concept of apple. Simple enough, right? But in legal science, it's a whole different ballgame. The thing we study, like a legal norm or a rule, isn't a physical object. It's already an idea. So what legal scholars do is create a concept about a concept. It's literally an idea of an idea. And yeah, that makes things way more abstract. So if you're building with something as abstract as ideas of ideas, how on earth do you create a stable, coherent system? Well, that brings us to Section 2, the architect's conceptual tool. It turns out jurists have a very specific and really powerful mental tool for doing just that. And here it is. The tool is called a conceptual legal construction. Now, the best way to think about this is not as a simple definition you'd find in a dictionary. It's much more like an architect's blueprint. You see, it's not just about collecting and describing the rules that already exist. It's about actively designing a whole conceptual model of a legal idea, making sure you understand its structure, its integrity, and how it's supposed to actually work. So, how do you build one of these things? Well, it breaks down into 3 basic steps. First, you need your components. These are your building blocks, the core legal concepts like property or contract. Then, step 2 is about the internal connections. How do these blocks fit together? What are the relationships between them? And finally, step 3 is the structure itself. You assemble everything into a complete framework that actually models the legal phenomenon you're trying to build. Now, you might be thinking this all sounds incredibly theoretical, but it's not. This way of thinking, this conceptual design, has been the driving force behind some of the most important legal masterworks in history. Which brings us to Section 3, Blueprints of Legal History. Just look at this timeline. We're talking about massive projects. It goes all the way back to the Roman Empire with the Justinian Code, a huge effort to create a coherent system. Fast forward to 17th century France, and you have Jean Domont, whose conceptual scheme laid the groundwork for the famous French Civil Code. And then in 19th century Germany, you get the German Civil Code, a system so focused on its conceptual design that the theory almost mattered more than the existing facts on the ground. These weren't accidents, they were deliberate acts of legal architecture. Okay, to really lock this in, we need to draw a very sharp line between 2 things. This is super important. We're moving into Section 4, concepts versus rules, because a grand conceptual blueprint is not the same thing as a specific rule in the building code. So let's ask it directly. How is a conceptual construction different from a simple law? This table lays it out perfectly. Look at the formation. A conceptual construction comes out of jurisprudence, out of legal science and thinking. A rule, on the other hand, comes from legislation. It's the will of a lawmaker. And their actions are totally different. The construction is for modeling and understanding. The rule is regulatory. It's meant to go out and actually change reality, to produce legal consequences. One is for thinking and designing, the other is for doing. Okay, so why should we care about this seemingly abstract idea right now, today? Well, that's what our final section is all about. Constructing tomorrow's law. The short answer is, we're living through another period of massive, profound change. And right now, our legal systems need architects more than they need repairmen. Think about it. The Industrial Revolution completely upended society, and it forced jurists to come up with entirely new legal designs for things like corporations and labor law. Well, our generation has its own catalyst, and it's the information society. The digital world, virtual reality, these things are presenting challenges that our old legal frameworks just weren't built for. We need new blueprints to navigate this territory. And the applications today are absolutely critical. We're talking about designing laws for virtual environments where the old rules just don't apply. They help ensure legal continuity, so the whole system doesn't fall apart every time a specific law gets updated. They help create a common language so that different legal fields and even different countries can understand each other. They give us a stable structure for all our legal knowledge. I love this last phrase. They serve as the pre-normative being of law. That's the essential, foundational thought that has to happen before a single rule can even be written. And this brings us to a powerful concluding thought from Professor Kискинov himself. The unconditional necessity of goal-oriented systemic constructivism stemming from the demands placed on law by virtual reality. What he's saying is, this isn't optional anymore. The new reality we're building demands that we become conscious, deliberate architects of our legal systems. So the real question for us isn't if we need these tools, it's how quickly and how well we can master them to build the law of tomorrow.